Hello students, welcome to week 4 of technical writing. This is your instructor, Richard Costa. We'll be beginning grammar exercises this week, and this is kind of a, I guess you would say, workplace, adult, college, professional type writing. The biggest issues in this arena would be things like writing with clarity, which we're going to look at first. Writing for conciseness, cutting out the wordiness, that's what that's about. And when you're writing with clarity and without wordiness, you are writing fluently. So we'll just begin. It's pretty self-explanatory, but it's important that you view this PowerPoint with or without my audio here before attempting the exercises. Excuse me, because and pay attention to each example, because the first 4 exercises you'll see this week are all about clarity, and basically when something's ambiguous, you really gotta think about how to correct it or what's ambiguous about it. Some of them are a little tricky. They're almost like brain teasers. So without further ado, revising for clarity. The opposite of clarity is ambiguity. I'll say so. Clarity means to be clear. Ambiguity means double meaning, unclear. Okay, so an unclear sentence often has a double meaning. For example, well, let me say something here. Hope this is working. Clear sentence requires no more than a single reading. The following suggestions will help you write clear sentences. Okay, clarity is clear and lucid. Ambiguous means unclear, double meaning. Okay, so there's the key operating terms here. So when we get to the next slide, we're going to talk about ambiguous phrasing. And incidentally, I'm not as concerned that you know every grammatical term, though you should know the basics here: clarity, conciseness, ambiguity, in as much as that you're able to solve these things, though some of this stuff could show up on your exams as well. So ambiguous phrasing. So let's take a look at that first sentence. It's very, at first glance, a lot of students, myself, might think this is okay, but if you look at it closely, it's not. All managers are not required to submit reports. So why is that unclear? Does that mean all managers do not submit reports? Or some managers are not required to submit reports? Okay. And that's a function of how it was written. Someone wrote it in a rush. They know what they mean, but their readers don't. Now here's a revision. Managers are not all required to submit reports, or managers are not required to submit reports. 2 different meanings. So notice both revisions of the original sentence have a different meaning. Ambiguous writing confuses readers who may interpret the meaning much differently than the author intended. And this can be not only misleading and confusing, but depending on what kind of writing you're doing, it could be downright dangerous sometimes. You know, someone's following a set of instructions for building something, for instance, and they read the wrong meaning into it, and that could have pretty disastrous results, right? So know that, I mean, the last stat I had was that upwards of 60% of workplace writing is inefficient, poor, confusing, all this kind of thing. So pretty important. So ambiguous pronoun reference. Okay, we're going to look at the Jack at the bottom here first. So a pronoun like he or she has a referent, a noun. So Joe is a football player. He's a very good quarterback. So the he refers to Joe, and it makes sense the way I said it. So let's take a look at the sentence. Jack resents his assistant because he is competitive. Now, that second pronoun he, who does it represent? Jack or his assistant? We don't know, and that's why it has a double meaning, because if you look at the 2 revisions below, it's got to mean one or the other. So when you're correcting a sentence like this, you kind of got to pick one, right? And you don't know what the author intended. Revise: because his assistant is competitive, Jack resents him, or because Jack is competitive, he resents his assistant. Okay? Our patients enjoy the warm days while they last. Okay, our patients, warm days. Now they is the referent for one of these. So this is a pretty cold sounding sentence, right? Sounds like our patients, and this sounds like elderly patients are waiting for them to die, basically. Our patients enjoy the warm days while they last. Okay? So, and that's because they is ambiguous. Okay? So, revised, while these warm days last, our patients enjoy them. That's a much nicer sentence, right? That has much more clarity. Or, our terminal patients enjoy the warm days. Here the patients are effectually dying, but it's not, poorly written or insensitive, okay? So, ambiguous modifier. Modifiers explain, define, or add detail to other words or ideas, and if a modifier is too far from the word it modifies, the message becomes ambiguous, such as this first sentence: only press the red button in an emergency. So, does that mean you only use this red button when there's a declared emergency, an alarm? Or does it mean only press the red button and not the blue button, this kind of thing? Or that's the only time you can use the red button is in an emergency. So they're not very clear. Okay, so to show you what I mean, press only the red button in an emergency. Just by moving that only, it's modifying better. Okay. Revised again, press the red button in an emergency only. Okay, so maybe you never touch that red button save for an emergency, you see. So it helps to be clear. A classic dangling modifier. This a modifying phrase is no word to modify. Being so well known in the computer industry, I would appreciate your advice. Okay, so that first half of the sentence is a modifying phrase with nothing to modify. I see a good deal of these in student writing. Okay, the correction is because you are so well known in the computer industry, I would appreciate your advice. Okay, because you are so well known in the computer industry, or because Joe is so well known, I would appreciate his advice. Okay. Unstack modifying nouns. One noun can modify another, such as software development. But when two or more nouns modify a noun, the string of densely packed words becomes hard to read and ambiguous. It becomes like a noun pile, and they all start modifying each other. Be sure to leave enough time for a training session participant evaluation. Sorry about that. Be sure to leave enough time to evaluate participants in the training session. See how you broke that phrase up, and evaluate is becoming a clear verb again? Or, there's a couple of solutions to this, I thought. Oh yeah, or the second one, be sure to leave enough time for participants to evaluate the training session. Okay? So, observe those two, and you'll see that they're much better sentences. And the first one is just rushed, and it's confusing, because look, it can have two meanings. Do you want participants to evaluate the training session, or do you want the participants to be evaluated? Okay, I think for conciseness, I'm gonna pause here in a moment. Hang on. I will do conciseness in a separate video, as these are only operating on 10-minute clips, and we're at about 9 minutes, so I'll have 2 clips.